Learn how to actually study before it's too late. You're sitting at your desk, textbook open, highlighter in hand. You've read the same paragraph 3 times now, and if someone asked you what it said, you'd have nothing. So you highlight another sentence, then another. The page turns yellow. You feel productive. You feel busy. But somewhere underneath that, in a place you don't want to look, you know the truth. You're not actually learning anything. This is the moment most of us live in when we talk about studying. We're performing the ritual without understanding the religion. And here's what nobody tells you. The problem isn't that you're lazy or undisciplined. The problem is that almost everything you've been taught about how to study is designed to make you feel like you're studying, not to make you actually learn. The difference between those two things is where most academic careers go to die. Think about how we're taught to approach learning. Reread your notes, highlight the important parts, review before the exam, maybe make flashcards if you're feeling ambitious. These methods have been passed down like family recipes, and like family recipes, nobody questions whether they actually work. They just feel right. They feel like studying is supposed to feel, effortful, time-consuming, colored with the faint sensation of suffering that we've come to associate with learning. But there's an entire field of cognitive psychology that spent decades figuring out how memory actually works, and what they found contradicts almost everything we do in that late-night cramming session. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The techniques that feel like they're working are often the ones that aren't, and the techniques that actually work often feel wrong, inefficient, even frustrating. This isn't an accident. It's how your brain is wired. When you reread something, it becomes familiar. Familiarity feels like understanding. Your eyes move across words you've seen before, and your brain says, yes, I know this. It's the same sensation you get when you recognize a song or a face. But recognition isn't recall. Knowing you've seen something before is completely different from being able to retrieve it when you need it. Psychologists call this fluency illusion. The material feels easy when you're reviewing it, so you assume you've learned it. Then the test comes, the context changes, and suddenly that fluency evaporates. You're left staring at a question you know you studied, feeling betrayed by your own mind. The research here is devastatingly clear. In study after study, students who reread material rate themselves as more confident and more prepared than students who use active retrieval methods. But when they're actually tested, they perform significantly worse. They've mistaken the comfort of recognition for the power of knowledge. So what actually works? The answer is almost cruel in its simplicity. You have to practice forgetting. Real learning happens at the moment of retrieval, when you force your brain to pull information out of storage without prompts, without context, without the safety net of the textbook open in front of you. This is why testing yourself works, not because it prepares you for the exam format, but because the act of retrieval itself rewires your memory. There's a concept in cognitive science called desirable difficulty. It suggests that learning should feel somewhat challenging, somewhat uncomfortable. When you test yourself and get something wrong, when you struggle to remember, when you have to think hard to reconstruct an idea, that's when your brain is actually building durable knowledge. The struggle is the point. But we've been conditioned to avoid that struggle. We interpret difficulty as a sign that something's wrong, that we're not smart enough, that we need to go back and reread until it feels easy again. We're running from the very thing that would save us. Consider how a musician practices. They don't just play through the piece over and over again from beginning to end. They isolate the hard parts. They play them slowly, deliberately, wrong at first, correcting, trying again. They practice the mistake until it becomes impossible. That's active learning. That's what your brain needs. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There's another principle called spaced repetition, and it reveals something strange about memory. Information that you review too soon doesn't stick. If you study something today and review it tomorrow, you'll remember it tomorrow, but you probably won't remember it next month. But if you wait, if you let yourself almost forget and then retrieve it right at the edge of forgetting, you strengthen that memory path exponentially. This is why cramming fails. You're packing everything into short-term memory, a space that was designed to hold phone numbers and directions, not semesters worth of complex ideas. It feels efficient because you can hold so much at once, but short-term memory is a leaky bucket. By next week, it's gone. The ancient Greeks understood something about this. They didn't have textbooks or study guides. They had dialogue, Socratic method. The teacher would ask questions, and the student would have to think, retrieve, construct answers from what they knew. Learning wasn't about absorbing information. It was about discovering what you could do with it. We've lost that somewhere. We've turned education into a transfer of data from page to brain, and we measure success by how much we can temporarily hold. But your brain isn't a hard drive. It's a living, physical network that rewires itself based on what you ask it to do. So pause here for a moment and think about your own studying. Not what you tell yourself you do, but what you actually do. When you sit down to prepare for something that matters, where does your instinct take you? Are you rereading? Are you highlighting? Are you making yourself feel busy? Or are you making yourself think? There's no judgment in this question. Most of us do what we were taught to do, but self-awareness is the beginning of change. Here's the distinction that matters. Active studying should feel like you're building something. Passive studying feels like you're reviewing someone else built. One requires you to generate answers, to make connections, to fail and correct. The other just requires your eyes to move across a page. And yes, the active approach is harder. It takes more mental energy. It's slower at first. You can't fool yourself into feeling productive after 20 minutes. But the difference in retention isn't marginal. We're not talking about 5 or 10% improvement. Students who use retrieval practice and spaced repetition often double their long-term retention compared to rereading. Think about what that means. You could study half as much and remember twice as long, but only if you're willing to let go of the methods that feel safe. The truth about learning is that it's not supposed to feel like pouring water into a glass. It's supposed to feel like building muscle. There's resistance, there's fatigue, there's the moment where you're not sure you can do another rep. And then, slowly, you get stronger. We admire this process in athletes. We understand that a runner doesn't get faster by walking the same path every day. They do intervals, they push limits, they create controlled discomfort because that's where adaptation happens. But somehow, when it comes to the mind, we expect comfort to produce growth. It won't. The students who succeed aren't necessarily the ones who study the most. They're the ones who study in a way that aligns with how memory actually works. They test themselves relentlessly. They space out their practice. They embrace the discomfort of not knowing because they understand that not knowing is just the starting point of learning. This isn't about becoming a different person. It's about working with your brain instead of against it. And once you understand the mechanics, once you see that the frustration you feel when you can't remember something is actually the feeling of your brain building new pathways, everything changes. You stop seeing difficulty as failure. You start seeing it as information. So here's what it comes down to. Studying isn't about making yourself feel prepared. It's about making yourself capable. And capability only comes from doing the thing that's hard until it becomes possible. That's the truth you can stand behind when someone asks why you're quizzing yourself instead of rereading your notes. You're not trying to feel ready, you're trying to become ready. And there's a difference. If you found something here that shifted how you think about learning, the next videos go deeper into how to actually structure this kind of practice, how to build systems that force retrieval without burning out, and why most productivity advice misses the point entirely. These aren't random topics. They're the questions that naturally follow once you start seeing studying as a skill instead of a chore. But for now, just sit with this. The discomfort you've been avoiding might be exactly what you need.